Shortly. This time last year we introduced the concept of the Premiership profile, where there are 5 categories and qualities that history has shown that premiers have displayed. Now the key to the Premiership profile is that you've got to have 3 at least categories ticked of the 5 categories, and you can see there in 2019, 18 and 17 it has actually played out and pointed to who the Premier is going to be. And it's been so for many, many years down the past since Champion Data have been taking their numbers. So let's take a look at the Premiership profile as it sits at the present time. And here are the 5 categories: points from turnover differential, points from the forward half, points from the back half, Oppo scores per inside 50, pointing to defence, and of course our old favourite from last year, the post-clearance contested possession. And the top 3 are the big 3 still: West Coast, Geelong and Richmond, which may surprise some because Brisbane Lions and obviously Port Adelaide filled the top 2 positions on the ladder.
So to get a tick in one of those categories, you need to be top 5 in the competition in that area. And really, this is just now all of the aspects of the game, when you go back over history, are most conducive to coming up with a winning formula, or you're most likely to win if you're good in these areas.
So Port Adelaide would be the interesting one there. I mean, the supporters are going, hang on a damn minute, we're on top of the ladder and have been for a long time, yet they're only ticking one of these boxes. So it may suggest that they are a bit one way, or have one way of going about it, which is good enough to win big games. But when it doesn't work, as it didn't work on Friday night, whether they've got an alternative plan to go to is the question.
That's a big thing, isn't it, Gaz? Have you got the alternative plan when you're not having your greatest day?
Yeah.
You know, and I think Richmond, well, last week, Port Adelaide against Geelong, they couldn't get their mode going. They get beaten comprehensively. I think Richmond's the best example of it, a side that can win both ways, or has 2 modes. Last year's final series, their first 2 finals, they had to do a lot of their scoring from the back half, which is not their ideal MO, but they did it. They won anyway, and then, of course, grand final day, they had the game on their terms and they just wiped GWS off the park. So they won in 2 different brands throughout September. They were able to hang on when things just weren't going their best, Jared.
Well, the classic case was the prelim final, where Geelong took away their front half game, turning the ball over, great pressure across the ground, but mainly in the front half, and then they were able to score from the back half. And you guys did the Geelong game, and Geelong last year were a great forward half side. They were turning the ball over, getting great ground balls, but they lacked that back half game, being able to score. But that is one thing that they have turned on their head, and they now can win both ways.
Yeah, so at the moment, if we're talking about tiers of teams, so we think there are 3 based on the Premiership profile that have really elevated. 3 teams that can get you 2 ways. So if you take away their one method, they can get you with another method. And that's Richmond, West Coast, and we saw Geelong do exactly that.
So Geelong was 17th and 17th for going from their back 50 to inside 50 last year, and from going back 50 to score. Now they sit at 6th and 2nd. So let's have a look at how they're doing it. And this is what opposition teams are going to have to try and work. They're just really precise. And what they do, boys, is they take on kicks that other teams won't take on. Not so much that one, but teams will look at this kick here and go, well, I won't do this. It's too hard. They're surrounded by opposition players. He's on the run. But they just hit it. They hit that. He's got a bloke right on his ginger. He turns, looks inside. There's Harry Taylor in amongst 4. And what it does, they've moved the defence. So all of a sudden they're going, well, we've got to come across Port Adelaide and we've got to move up the ground because they're going to pick them off. So they can't afford to go back and drop back into the hole where this man sits.
And that's right. And so that's when you end up with something that looks like, Joey Montagna phrased it last night, Hawkins Island, because all of the other small half forwards, they pose a threat. You see them hit the low kicks, or they might hit this one inside 50. I've got to press up as a defender and take that option away. Guess what? Hawkins Island, 30 metres out the back.
So when that ball's on the boundary and he goes inside 50, go, oh, big deal. But what happens ahead of the play? They go, gee, they will hit it. So I've got to go and find him, and I've got to go and find him. So you'll see Lysette thinking, do I go back and try and play 2-on-1 on Hawkins, or are they going to keep switching the ball? And you just saw him at the end, Lysette didn't get back. So that is a great example of a team that weren't great going from the back to the front, who are doing it really well this year.
Do you think Jeddah resembles a bit of their Hawthorn, the great Hawthorn teams of a few years back with their kicking out of the back line?
I think they are, and I think Adam Simpson's taken that philosophy over to the Eagles. The Eagles can win both ways, as we know. But when I look at that vision of Port Adelaide, and I saw Hawkins Island last night from Joe, I keep asking myself, why aren't Port Adelaide running harder? Why are they allowing those easy kicks? And you can wait and wait, but you look at the sides that disrupt that sort of movement, they are switched on. And Port Adelaide, not switched on for mine.
They get very high up too, Jared. So unless they're absolutely 100% effort, all out running backwards, running the other way, which is tough to do, they're going to get found out.
You showed some great vision last week of Geelong using their high half forward and their wing to slot into defence. Yeah. And the Eagles, they played Geelong 2 weeks ago. Hawkins kicked 2. Got a fair few more possessions up the ground off the island. He was beaten back straight, I think. But, I mean, there are going to be some fantastic, I guess, moves and counter moves over this next 5 weeks trying to disrupt. But you can't take away from the strength of the West Coast Eagles. They were brilliant in the forward half. It was great to see Flying Ryan, but the foundation of their game remains ball movement.
Back half. And this is what we're talking about. Teams that can do it both ways. Teams that can win by trapping a footy in, causing a turnover and defending and getting scores from the front half. But this sort of stuff, going from one end of the ground to the other. And opposition sides, in the end, are powerless to stop it because you're precise and you're accurate and you're moving the ball well and you're all on the same page. And then your forwards, get Josh Kennedy, gets a one-out look.
And they've got the big joker too. The ace in the sleeve, the big joker is Nick Naitanui. You know, with centre bouncers, if the grand finals played in Queensland, you know, especially the Gabba like we think it is, we've spoken about it as a really good centre bounce ground. They're really dangerous, those centre bouncers, because their midfielders can get on the fly. Nick Naitanui can hit those attacking hits, and if they win it, they're going into an even-numbered forward line, and they've got the big forwards to mark, Allen, Darling and Kennedy.
The 6-6-6 rule was invented for Naitanui.
Yeah, it was, absolutely. And to reiterate again, the reason it's really important to have two methods to go to is exactly what we've seen Geelong do against two of the teams that we saw in the Premiership profile there the last 2 weeks. St Kilda, they took away their strength, their method. They didn't have something else. They did it to Port Adelaide again. Port didn't have anything else. So those other contenders, they've got 6 weeks to figure out another method, Jerry.
Well, let's talk about the other two contenders, because the Brisbane Lions and Port Adelaide, they're very much the same. They're great territory sides. They get the ball in, they lock it in. But if they can't get their winning score, they've both been shown to be frustrated trying to move the ball from the back half to the front half.